The night was too quiet for a mansion that big. Rain tapped against the tall glass windows. Thunder rolled like angry drums, and somewhere inside, a young girl was crying, softly, almost afraid her tears would echo. 18-year-old Amara Johnson sat at the edge of a king-sized bed that didn't feel like hers. The diamond ring on her trembling hand sparkled under the chandelier, mocking her like a cruel joke. Downstairs, laughter echoed, deep, confident, and cold. Her new husband, Carter Blackwood, a 40-year-old billionaire whose face was always on Forbes magazine, was celebrating. Alone, celebrating a marriage she never wanted. Her body was there, but her soul, locked somewhere between fear and disbelief. She could still hear her mama's voice from earlier that morning cracking under pressure. "Baby, this is the only way we can save our house. Please just do it." And now Amara's entire world had changed in a matter of hours. She wasn't just somebody's daughter anymore. She was a man's property. When the bedroom door opened, she froze. Carter walked in, his black suit still sharp, his jaw clenched tight. He didn't look like a monster, but the way his eyes pinned her down made her heart race. "From now on," he said in a voice that could slice through glass, "you do what I say. You're my wife now, Amara." But here's the twist nobody saw coming. Not even Amara, because months later, that same man who forced her into this life would risk everything. His name, his fortune, his freedom, just to protect her. Yeah, you heard that right. The rude billionaire everyone thought was heartless would end up loving her more deeply than anyone ever could. So before you judge him, before you call him a monster, remember, every story's got two sides. And this one, it's gonna change everything you thought you knew about love, power, and second chances. Amara Johnson wasn't like most girls her age. She was the kind of 18-year-old who carried too much weight for her small shoulders. Part-time job at the diner, full-time caretaker for her mama, and dreams too big for a girl born on the wrong side of Atlanta. Her mama, Denise, had been battling lupus for years. Some days she couldn't even get out of bed. Amara would wake up at 5:30 every morning, fix her mama's meds, make coffee that tasted more like love than caffeine, and catch the 6:10 bus downtown to her shift at Mary Lou's Diner. Folks there loved her. The regulars called her Sunshine. Even when life kept throwing punches, Amara smiled like she was too stubborn to quit. But behind that smile was fear. Fear of the eviction notice taped to their apartment door last week. Fear of hospital bills stacked on the counter like a mountain she'd never climb. Her boss, Mary Lou, used to say, "Baby, the world's got a way of testing people like us. Don't let it break you. If only life listened." That morning, when Amara came home, her mama was sitting at the kitchen table, dressed up like she was waiting for someone. There was a man across from her in a gray suit, looking too polished for their little apartment. His name was Harold Blackwood, and when Amara shook his hand, she felt something cold crawl up her spine. He was smooth-talking, but his eyes were sharp. The kind of man who saw the world in deals and signatures, not people and feelings. "Your mother and I go back," he said. "She once worked for me years ago. She's a good woman. That's why I'm here to offer. Help, help," the word sounded harmless. But when Denise's voice trembled as she explained, Amara realized help came with a price. Harold's son, Carter Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Industries, one of the biggest real estate empires in the South, needed a wife. Not for love, but for image. See, the tabloids had been tearing him apart, calling him cold, arrogant, racist, unfit to lead his own company. He needed someone to clean up his reputation, make him look more human before an upcoming merger. And guess who they thought would be the perfect candidate? Amara, a young, innocent, hard-working black girl. The kind of story that screams redemption and media gold. When she heard it, Amara laughed like it was a bad joke. "You think I'm gonna marry some 40-year-old billionaire I don't even know? For what, a couple dollars?" But when she looked at her mama, tears glistening in those tired eyes, the laughter died. Denise whispered, "Baby, he promised to pay for my treatment, to keep the house." That night, Amara sat alone on their small porch, staring at the city lights in the distance. The world didn't feel fair. Why did survival always come with a price tag? The next few days were a blur. Lawyers, papers, and whispered phone calls. Every time she tried to back out, her mama reminded her of the hospital bills, the rent, the oxygen tank. And finally, Amara said yes. But the yes didn't feel like a choice. It felt like a chain. On the day of the wedding, she wore a dress chosen for her, white satin that hugged her too tight, makeup that made her look older, not happier. Reporters were already outside the courthouse, snapping pictures, shouting questions. Amara, how does it feel marrying one of America's richest men? Carter, is this true love or a publicity stunt? Carter didn't flinch. He stood tall, confident, his jaw set like stone. He barely looked at her, like she was part of the deal, not a person. When the officiant said, "You may now kiss the bride," Amara froze. Carter leaned in, brushed her cheek with the coldest kiss imaginable, and whispered just low enough for her to hear. "Smile, they're watching." That moment, she understood what it meant to lose control of your own story. But something strange happened during their first week together. Carter wasn't cruel, not exactly. He was distant, commanding, but there was something behind those blue eyes. Something broken. Late at night, Amara would hear him pacing the halls, muttering to himself about trust, betrayal, and not again. She didn't know what haunted him, but it wasn't money or fame. It was something deeper, and though she hated him, she couldn't shake the feeling that beneath all that arrogance was a man drowning in his own guilt. Still, she promised herself one thing. If this was the life she was forced into, she'd survive it her way. Strong, proud, and unbroken. What she didn't know was that her strength would soon be the very thing to melt Carter's icy heart and expose a dark secret, powerful enough to destroy them both: the Blackwood estate was a world Amara had never known. 20,000 square feet of cold marble, polished silence, and people who looked through her, not at her. The moment she stepped through those iron gates, it was like walking into a whole different universe, one where money talked, and people like her were supposed to stay quiet. Carter's mansion sat on a private hill outside Savannah, surrounded by manicured gardens and a long driveway lined with imported oak trees. The place smelled of old money and secrets. Every staff member wore the same polite smile that didn't reach their eyes. The housekeeper, Mrs. Vickers, a sharp-faced woman in her 50s, greeted Amara with a smile tight enough to cut glass. "Mrs. Blackwood," she said, voice dripping with sarcasm, "welcome to your new home." The word home stung. That night, Amara tried to eat dinner at the massive oak table across from Carter. The silence between them felt heavier than the chandeliers above. She picked at her food, wondering if she'd made the worst mistake of her life. Then came Carter's phone ringing. He didn't look at her when he answered. Yeah, she's here now. The PR team's setting up the interview for Friday." Interview. He ended the call and finally looked up. "Tomorrow you'll have a stylist, a makeup artist, and a media coach. We're going to show the world we're the perfect couple." Amara blinked. "So I'm just your trophy wife for the cameras?" Carter's expression didn't change. "You agreed to this," her voice cracked. "No, I was forced into this." He didn't reply. He just stood up, tossed his napkin on the table, and walked away. The next morning, Amara met the team, all white, all polite in that fake kind of way. They brushed her hair, criticized her skin tone. "We'll need to lighten under the eyes. The camera picks up shadows," and adjusted her smile like she was a mannequin. Every word felt like a pinprick. When they asked her to wear a beige dress to blend better with Carter during the shoot, she wanted to scream. But she stayed quiet. She knew what silence could cost. Her mama's treatment depended on it. During the interview, the reporter leaned in with that too sweet smile. "So, Amara, what's it like being married into such an prestige? Must be quite an adjustment coming from your background." "From my background?" she repeated, forcing a smile. The woman laughed softly. "You know, working class Southern. You must have had such a different life before." Carter shifted beside her, jaw tightening, but he didn't say a thing. Not one damn word. That night, when the interview aired, social media exploded. Some people called her a gold digger. Others said Carter was doing charity. The comments section was a storm. No way she married him for love. He could have done better. Typical. Another billionaire trying to look woke. Amara read every word until her chest felt like it was splitting open. She turned off her phone and threw it across the room. When Carter came in later, she confronted him. "You said this would help both of us. All it did was make me look like a fool." He rubbed his temples. "You think I care what people say about me? I don't care about you. They're dragging me for something I didn't even choose." Carter's voice hardened. You think you're the only one paying a price here? You think I wanted this? That stopped her. His eyes looked tired, haunted even. But before she could ask, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Days turned into weeks, and the air between them stayed cold. But small cracks began to form. One night, Amara found Carter sitting in his study, staring at a framed photo of a young black woman. Beautiful, smiling, her hand resting on his shoulder. "Who's that?" Amara asked softly. He looked startled, then whispered, "My late wife, Nicole." Amara froze. "She was black?" He nodded slowly. "She died 8 years ago. Car accident. The media tore us apart when we married. My investors said she was bad for the company image. And when she died, they said it was a blessing." The anger in his voice shook her. For the first time, she saw the pain behind the arrogance. The walls he built weren't just for control. They were protection. The next morning, when Amara went into town for groceries, she noticed the stairs. 2 white women near the cafe whispered loud enough for her to hear. "That's Carter Blackwood's new wife. Thought he'd learned his lesson after the last one. Some people never do. They always try to climb where they don't belong." Amara's hands trembled as she paid for her groceries. The cashier, a teenage boy, gave her change without looking at her. She was invisible, or worse, an eyesore. That night when she got home, a note was taped to the gate. "You'll never be one of us. Go back where you came from." She showed it to Carter. For a second, something like fury flashed across his face. "Who gave you this?" "I found it on the gate." He clenched his jaw. "You don't have to worry about this." But the next day, she overheard him shouting on the phone, "If I find out anyone from this community is behind that, I'll ruin them." That was the first time she saw him stand up for her. A few nights later, at a charity gala, everything boiled over. Amara wore a deep blue gown, elegant, confident, beautiful. She felt ready to prove she belonged, until a board member's wife leaned close and whispered, "You clean up well, sweetheart. Must be quite a change from your diner days, huh?" Amara froze. She forced a smile and excused herself, her stomach twisting. But as she turned to leave, she heard laughter. The cruel, quiet kind. Carter saw the whole thing. He walked up, placed his arm around Amara, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "My wife's not the one who should be ashamed here." The room went silent. After that night, something shifted. Carter started treating her differently, softer, more protective. He still didn't talk much, but his actions spoke louder than any apology could. He made sure her mama's treatments were covered. He asked her about her day. He even smiled once or twice, and real smiles, not the staged kind. But with warmth came new danger. Because the more people saw them together, the uglier the hate became. Anonymous messages, slashed tires, threatening calls. Carter tried to shield her from it all. But the truth was, his name, his wealth, even his love couldn't protect her from the prejudice that ran deep in the world they lived in. And as their hearts began to open to each other, a storm was quietly building in the background, one that would expose a secret powerful enough to destroy both their lives. Because the note on the gate? It wasn't just from a stranger, it was from someone inside the mansion, someone who'd been watching her. The night everything came crashing down started like any other. Quiet, eerie, too calm for comfort. The air around the Blackwood mansion felt heavy, like even the wind knew something ugly was about to happen. Amara was sitting by the window, scrolling through hateful comments online, her chest tight. Even after months, folks still wouldn't let her live in peace. Gold digger, fake wife, diversity stunt. It didn't matter what she did. She was still the black girl who didn't belong in a billionaire's world. Carter walked in, his tie loosened, his face pale. "Amara, we need to talk." Her stomach dropped. "What happened?" He handed her a folder. Inside were photos, surveillance images, phone transcripts, even emails. Someone had been leaking her private messages, twisting her words to make it look like she was using him for money. One headline screamed, "Amara Blackwood exposed. Secret plan to take half his fortune?" Amara's knees buckled. This isn't real. It's all over the news, Carter said quietly. Our board is panicking. Investors are calling for my resignation. She looked up at him, her eyes glassy. You think I did this? He didn't answer. That silence, that single heartbeat of doubt, cut deeper than any insult ever could. She shoved the papers against his chest. After everything I've been through for you, you still think I'm the villain here? Amara, No, you don't get to just anything. You brought me into this circus, made me your puppet, and now when it gets ugly, you're looking at me like I'm the problem. Carter's voice cracked for the first time. I've seen this before, okay? I trusted people. I trusted her. He meant Nicole. And what happened? Amara asked, tears streaming. You lost her. But I'm not her, Carter. I'm not the ghost you're punishing me for. For a moment, he looked like a man caught between guilt and grief. But before he could speak, the house alarm blared. They rushed downstairs. Security lights flashed across the driveway. A black SUV was parked by the gates, and on its hood, spray-painted in red, were the words, Traitor Lover. The guard handed Carter a piece of paper found on the ground. It was typed, but the message was clear. You chose her over your own, now you'll pay for it. That night they didn't sleep. The mansion felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by hate. The next morning, detectives showed up. They said the yacht's threats were connected to a white nationalist group targeting interracial couples and high-profile families. Turns out someone inside Blackwood Industries had been feeding them information. Bank statements, addresses, even photos of Amara. Carter's face went white. Who inside my company had access to all this? The detective looked grim. Your father. Amara felt her blood run cold. Harold? Carter nodded slowly, like the truth had been living in the back of his mind all along. He always hated Nicole. Said she ruined the family name. I guess he's trying to finish what he started. The betrayal shattered him. Carter confronted Harold that afternoon in the office, and when Amara followed, staying just out of sight. Why? Carter's voice was low, trembling with rage. You destroyed her life. You leaked everything. Harold leaned back in his chair, calm as ever. I built this empire, son. You're letting some girl drag our legacy through the mud. The world doesn't want to see a Blackwood mixing bloodlines with the help. Carter slammed his fist on the desk. She's my wife, Harold sneered, for now. But when the dust settles, she'll walk away with your name, your money, and your shame. That's when Amara stepped out. Her voice didn't shake. You think I want your damn money? I'd give it all up just to stop breathing the same air as you. Harold turned, startled but unfazed. You've got fire, I'll give you that. Shame the world will burn you for it. Carter's eyes darkened. You're done here. I'll dismantle every part of this company before I let your hate poison it any longer. For once, Harold didn't have a comeback. He just stared, the kind of stare that said this war wasn't over. The next few weeks were a blur. The investigation exposed Harold's connection to hate groups and illegal donations. The media went wild. Carter resigned from his company before they could fire him, saying, "If my father's empire was built on prejudice, it's better to let it fall." People finally started seeing Amara differently. Not as a trophy, but as a survivor. TV anchors praised her courage. Civil rights groups reached out to offer support. But fame never felt like justice. Not when the scars still ached. Through it all, Amara stood beside Carter, even when she could have walked away. She knew pain when she saw it. And beneath his walls and mistakes, Carter had finally learned to listen, not just with his ears, but with his heart. One night, they stood together on the same porch where it all began. The night she said yes out of desperation. Only now, she said something different. "I don't forgive you yet," she whispered, her eyes soft. "But I see the man you're trying to be. And that's something." Carter smiled faintly. "I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn it." For the first time, she believed him. In the months that followed, Carter sold off his father's companies and started a foundation in Nicole's. and Amara's names, funding education programs for underprivileged black youth. Reporters called it redemption. Amara called it the start of something real. Because love, she'd learned, wasn't about fairy tales. It was about survival, forgiveness, and standing tall in a world built to knock you down. And as the sun set, behind the Blackwood mansion, Amara finally felt free, not because of the money, the name, or the power, but because she'd learned that even the most broken love stories can still lead to healing. The storm hit Savannah the same night everything finally came undone. Thunder cracked like the sky itself was breaking apart, and rain slammed against the mansion windows with a fury that matched Amara's heart. She'd been sitting alone in the study for hours waiting for Carter to come home. Ever since the news broke about his father's arrest, things had spiraled fast. Reporters camping outside, online hate doubling overnight, business partners cutting ties. And through it all, Carter had gone silent again, shutting her out like he did in the beginning. But this time, Amara wasn't going to let him drown her out. Not anymore. When the front door finally creaked open, she saw him. Drenched, exhausted, eyes wild. "Where were you?" she demanded. Carter threw his keys on the counter, trying to fix a mess I didn't create. "Oh, you mean the mess your racist father left behind?" she shot back. "Or the one you let eat away at us because you couldn't face it?" "Don't start, Amara. No, you don't start. You keep shutting me out like I'm some stranger you bought, not your wife." Her voice echoed through the hall, bouncing off those cold marble walls. The same walls that had witnessed every tear she'd cried since stepping into this house. Carter's hands trembled. "You think this is easy for me? I lost everything, the company, the name, the respect. And you, me what? You're the only thing I got left to lose." The words hit her harder than she expected. For a second, she saw the man behind the pride, broken, desperate, scared. But before she could answer, the mansion lights flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed them whole, then a crash. Glass shattering. "Carter!" she screamed. He ran toward the noise, but before he could reach the back door, it burst open. Two masked men stormed in, shouting, "Get down!" Amara froze. They weren't robbers. Their voices were too cold, too sure. "This is for your kind ruining ours," one of them snarled, pointing a gun at her. Carter moved without thinking, stepping in front of her, shielding her with his body. "You want someone to blame?" he yelled. "Blame me!" The gunman's finger twitched. The next few seconds moved like slow motion, thunder roaring, a flash of light. The deafening crack of a gunshot. Amara screamed as Carter fell. The men ran out before security could reach them. The storm outside swallowed their getaway like it was never real. Amara dropped to her knees, pulling Carter into her arms. Blood seeped through her hands, warm and terrifying. "Stay with me," she whispered, shaking. "Please, baby, don't you dare leave me now." His breathing was shallow, his eyes fading. "I'm sorry. For everything." No, don't you say goodbye," she cried. "You promised you'd make this right. You promised." Sirens wailed in the distance. Security guards shouted orders. But all Amara could hear was his heartbeat slowing beneath her palms. When the paramedics burst in, she refused to move. "He's not gone," she screamed. "You hear me? He's not gone!" They pulled her back, and the moment they lifted him onto the stretcher, her body went numb. Hours later, the hospital waiting room was chaos. Flashing lights, camera crews outside, whispers from staff who couldn't stop staring. The headlines hit before the truth even had a chance. Billionaire Carter Blackwood, shot protecting black wife from hate crime. Inside, Amara sat covered in his blood, clutching his wedding ring like it was the last piece of oxygen left in the world. When the doctor finally came out, she already knew. His face said it all. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "We did everything we could." Her world went silent. Everything she'd endured, the marriage, the hate, the fights, the love that came too late, it all collapsed in that moment. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stared at the floor and whispered. They finally got what they wanted. The next few days were a blur of chaos. Protesters filled the streets outside the hospital. Black Lives Matter activists demanded justice. News anchors called Carter a fallen hero. Politicians posted their fake condolences, but Amara didn't care about any of it. She sat alone in their empty bedroom, replaying every word they'd ever said to each other. That's when she found his letter. It was tucked inside the nightstand, sealed in an envelope marked for Amara. Her hand shook as she opened it. Amara, if you're reading this, I probably didn't make it. I've made too many mistakes trying to protect the world I thought mattered. But you showed me what real courage looks like. You showed me love without conditions. I built an empire on lies. You taught me truth. I built walls. You tore them down. And if my last act on this earth is standing between you and hate, then I finally did something right. Don't let them turn you into a victim. Tell our story. Make them listen. Always yours, Carter. Tears poured down her face, but this time they weren't from pain. They were from resolve. Because if Carter's death was the cost of silence, she'd make damn sure nobody stayed quiet again. 2 weeks later, Amara stood at his funeral, a sea of black umbrellas stretching as far as the eye could see. Cameras flashed, but she didn't flinch. When it was her turn to speak, she stepped to the microphone, voice steady despite the storm in her chest. They said I didn't belong here. They said this love wasn't real. But look around. Hate took his life, not love. And if anyone thinks silence keeps them safe, they're wrong, because silence is what kills us slowly every single day. The crowd fell silent. Even the rain seemed to pause. Her words hit like thunder and raw, honest, unforgettable, and though she'd lost everything, in that moment she became something bigger, a symbol of every woman who'd been silenced, every voice that had been drowned out by power and prejudice. As she placed Carter's ring on his coffin, she whispered, "You didn't die for nothing," because the world was finally listening. The weeks after Carter's death were like walking through fog. Savannah felt smaller, crueler, and yet somehow alive. Every corner of the city whispered reminders of hate, but also of courage. Amara never returned to the Blackwood mansion. She couldn't, not after the blood, the betrayal, the loss. But she carried something heavier, a responsibility. Carter's last words, his letter, his sacrifice, and they weren't just for her. They were for every black woman who had been told she didn't belong, every person silenced because society wanted them invisible. She started speaking at rallies, sharing her story with a voice that shook but never broke. "You think your silence keeps you safe?" she asked thousands one humid Saturday afternoon, the crowd sweating with her under the southern sun. "Nah, it don't. It just lets the world get away with murder, literal or otherwise. And I'm done letting it slide." Schools invited her to speak to students about self-worth, resilience, and the cost of prejudice. She met families who'd been crushed by similar systems. Fathers fired for marrying outside their race, children bullied, mothers threatened for daring to dream. And every time she spoke, she saw the spark of hope in their eyes. Her mama, Denise, smiled more now. "Baby, you turned tragedy into power," she'd say, holding her hand like it was gold. Amara also started a foundation in Carter's and her name, funding education for underprivileged black youth and programs against racial harassment. It wasn't easy. The backlash was relentless. Trolls online, critics calling her opportunistic, whispers about the rich boy's widow. But she refused to back down. She realized something important. Racism isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, subtle, embedded in systems, whispers, assumptions. It's the reason her life had been pushed to the edge, why Carter's father had wanted to erase her. And it's the reason countless others suffer in silence. But the other side of that, resilience, courage, speaking up even when the world expects you to bend, standing tall when everyone tries to erase you. Amara embodied that. She carried both grief and love in her chest and turned it into action. And yet, even as she built something meaningful from the wreckage, a haunting question lingered. One that made her look over her shoulder, at every system that hadn't changed. If the world is willing to destroy lives for hate, how many more are silently paying the cost right now? How many Amaras are out there, forced to choose between survival and dignity? Her story didn't end with the storm. It didn't end with Carter's death. It ended with awareness, with action, with the undeniable truth that even in a society built on injustice, courage, and love could still carve a path forward. Amara had lost the man she loved. But she had gained the world's attention, a voice loud enough to challenge racism, injustice, and complacency, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start changing the rules for the next generation. Because stories like hers, they don't die, they echo. and they make the world think twice before trying to silence another life.